Hi, Paul and Clark Switty here, and I'm in the Google Keyword Tool because today's topic is related to latent semantic indexing, but it is the rather wonderful topic of entity salience. And entity salience is let's break it down. Entity is the object in question. In this case, when we're talking about entity salience in terms of SEO, we're talking about the specific URL you are looking to rank, and if we break that down a little bit further, the content that's on it. We're going to be concentrating on the written content that's on it, although it could be video, it could be other multimedia, but for the sake of argument here, let's stick to written content on the page. And salience is the prominence of that content. It's not so much the authority, which is it's almost a synonym, but not quite. So what you want to do, you want for the keyword in your area, in your niche, in your market, you want to be your website's URL to be ranking highly, whether nationally, internationally, or locally, for that, because Google sees that that URL has entity salience. And this brings into our old friend latent semantic indexing, which is Google's increased weighting of the content on your website. Quick history lesson, back perhaps in 2010 and prior, links were probably nearly 90% of your website's ranking potential, the inbound links from other websites. Now links are probably under 50%. Some sites will have it substantially lower than that, but if you drill down into what they've actually broken links down into lots of different sorts of links. if you actually cluster the links back up to things that are links again, it still comes to 50% of most things. But suffice to say, it's a lot less than it used to be, and it may now be under 50%. So the content on your website plays a massively important role. So entity salience is if you like, the authority, but let's just say the prominence of your content. Now, in the long term, Google's going to work out the prominence of your content by measuring the visitor stats on your website. It will see how long people stay there, whether they click on things, whether they engage with your content, etc. That's great. Whether they actually do citation of your content and create links to it, things like that as well. That's great. But you've got to get to that stage first. If you like that stage too, how do you get Google to actually take note of a relatively new bit of content before it's had that exposure, before it's, which could take months or even years. If you look at some of the best ranking content on the web, it's been there since the early 2000s, some of it been there since the 1990s, and it's very hard to shift some of it because it's got such excellent user metrics. So how do you give your content that initial push? Well, it does come down basically to latent semantic indexing. It comes down to giving Google the context that it wants. But how do you go about ensuring that you do that right? Well, the example I've done on the web post which accompanies this on SEOautopilotcoupon.com is to do with puppy training, because it's that ubiquitous topic. So I stuck puppy training into Google, and it came up with, I think it's 850 words. And then I stuck those words into Excel. Now, you don't have to stick them in Excel. You can use Google Sheets or LibreOffice or OpenOffice, whatever else you want. This is the same lot. Now, what I've done here is I've filtered. I'll just show you the custom filter we use. It does not contain puppy or does not contain training. Why have I done that? Well, I've filtered out those two words from the keyword list that Google gave me, which I then exported and put into Excel, because I want to know the other words. I don't want to accidentally over optimize for puppy or over optimize for training. I want to know the entirely different words that and phrases that do not contain those words that Google is expecting. And once you filter those out, you're left with these. You can see the blue here in Excel tells me those are filtered, and there's a little filter box. Click filter, unfilter, and there you go, and I can Control Z and put the filter back on again. Very simple. So right, you then go down here. Well, it's expecting dog, it's expecting obedience, it's expecting behaviourist. Blimey, that's quite a lot. 2,400 classes. It's expecting trainers, housebreaking, socialization. That's relatively big. Dog barking. I wouldn't have thought that one. Agility equipment. Again, I wouldn't have thought of that one. How to train a dog, yeah, get that. Dog agility, What other big ones are there? How to train your dog. Chewing, stop dog chewing. House training. Books, dog books. You got me. Barking again, that's obviously a big issue. Separation anxiety, that's pretty huge. That's 5,000. That's one of the largest ones here. Biting, chewing again, hunting. There's a lot of phrases here that you would be encouraged to put into your content on your page to establish latent semantic indexing and to give your content the best chance of achieving entity salience, or at least getting a path on the ladder. And none of these phrases, aggressive dog behavior, none of these phrases contain puppy or contain training, because you can put some, if there's dog agility, you might want to put puppy agility in there, but it's given you all these new ideas. Very important that you don't accidentally over optimize for one of the words in a longer phrase. For instance, I'll give you an example. If you're doing puppy training and you then do, let's do puppy lessons, perfect puppy, the puppy trainer, puppy training courses, stop puppy from digging, suddenly you've totally over optimized for the word puppy. You look at it, and if you're using Yoast on WordPress or whatever tools you're using, it may not tell you that you've actually got something like a 7 or 8% huge over optimization for one of the keywords within your key phrase. Very important that you don't do that, which is why I filter out both the words from this phrase, puppy training, just to give me the others. And then you need to craft content around that. Now, the amount of content you need to craft varies, and it is a bit of a bugbear of mine, and I will write a post on this later on. But in the short term, I'll just tell you that Google understands to some extent the content requirements of different markets. For instance, if you're selling something as simple and straightforward as a light bulb, a 60-watt bayonet light bulb, it will expect 25 to 50 words of content. Bayonet light bulb, 60 watts, 1,000 hours guaranteed uses, manufacturer's name and the price. Because everybody knows what they are, nobody cares what they are. Very, very few people read up on light bulbs. So the content expectation is very low. If you're doing puppy training, people have an emotional bond with their pets, you can expect the content requirement to be substantially higher. It's a complex, much more complex topic. It's still something that people are selling. People sell light bulbs, people sell puppy training courses, but Google will expect you to write substantially more content to explain what they are, and that's quite right, because the buyer or your client, if you're a puppy trainer, will expect you to provide more content. They'll want to know where you are, what methods you have, what your testimonials are, that the dog that they put in your care to be trained is going to be well looked after, whether it's owner participation training or not, all sorts of things. And basically, if you could make a question of any of these, do you do dog socialization training? Are you near to them? Is it a boot camp mentality or normal? Do you help to stop chewing? Dogs chewing things? Do you help to stop dogs biting? Do you house train or potty train your dog? That's a weird word, isn't it? Can you deal with separation anxiety? People will have specific things, and they're very bonded to their pet, most people are, and they will expect these things to be explained to them. And it's a double win for you, because Google will expect it and reward you with the first step on the route to entity salience by treating your content favorably, even though it's new content, and people who arrive on your website, as long as the content is properly ordered, will benefit from it, and you'll benefit from their benefit, if you like, because you're explaining the topic in detail where that topic requires explanation. At the far end, I have a bricks and mortar client that sells products and services I don't even understand, and I'm reasonably well educated, but they sell dynamic balancing for all sorts of products. And I can, from context, I can sort of guess what dynamic balancing in industry and manufacturing is. But in actually, when I saw it, it wasn't what I expected, and how it's used and the sort of machineries and industrial applications it's got were completely not what I expected. So it took a lot more explanation. Now, if somebody's got an issue with the various things, concrete breaking due to vibration of industrial machines and all this sort of stuff, and they need this dynamic balancing. They're going to need probably a PDF paper to download that may have 3,000 or 4,000 words in it, and plus long explanations on the website, and Google will want to know you know what you're talking about. So you can have very deeply scientific or complex products that require a lot of content. You can have very simple products that require a very small amount of content, and you can have products in the middle that require a moderate amount of content. The one thing that does wind me up a little bit, there's lots of things that wind me up about the Yoast plugin for WordPress, is that it has this one size fits all. You've written 300 words or more, well done. Well, that's just nonsense. That doesn't work. There's so much about Yoast that is whitewashes things with one size fits all solutions, and you really need to tailor the amount of content you've got to the topic that you're writing about. However, that being said, this is where you get your initial ideas. Now what you can then do, if I pop into Google here, you can see I popped into Google, and wow, Google's given your headers, if you like. If I've typed puppy training or dog training into Google, and it's given me the suggestions, so the predictions, and now the option to report inappropriate predictions. There have been some spammed predictions before now, as you probably know, but I digress. So you may want to put dog or puppy training as your main header, then near me, classes. If you've got videos, you might want to use that. You might want to put leads, collards, or clicker. Again, another keyword for you, clicker. They might make the headers of your content. And what you'll find is if you went into your Excel spreadsheet and you took out 20 or 30 keywords from here, which is, I suggest, is probably about how many you'll find. Then you went into your Google sheet and you took out the headers from there, and you spent 10 minutes arranging them into some sort of order. You'll have the framework of your content almost written for you. It's almost a case of then just filling in the gaps and then checking you've got the right keyword density. Look for about a 3% keyword density for your main keyword, and no greater than 2 for any sub keywords of that. 2%. I would suggest that 600 to 800 words is a minimum for this topic, if you like, and off you'd go, and you'd be well on the way to creating entity salience, or at least starting with it. That doesn't mean you don't have to promote the topic yourself by whatever method you use to promote or broadcast. You still have to do that, of course, but what it means is the first time Google goes through it, it's going to be very well disposed to giving your content the best chance. If you think about it, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? There have to be visitors to your page for Google to measure how the visitors respond. And so what you need is to get Google to give your page that boot up the backside, to give it that little bit of page one exposure here and there, perhaps for some lesser keywords or some long tail keywords that you might potentially rank for, just to test how good your site is. And this is what the Google bounce probably is, or the Google shuffle, or whatever else you might want to call it. It's Google sticking a page in for some lesser keywords early, and perhaps sometimes you see a page, a URL jump onto page one for a quite high competition keyword and then disappear again. And one of the reasons, not just myself but other people think that happens, is Google likes to test that page. It looks good, it's past the potential entity salience latent semantic indexing test. Let's give it a day or two on page one, test the traffic. Well, if you don't pass that first entity salience test, you're not going to get that exposure to page one in the first place. So it's very important that you do that. And I say it's now probably 50-55% of your ranking potential is your on-site content. It's very hard to rank content alone without links. It's very hard in a competitive market. Sorry, I should caveat that, in a competitive market, and it's very hard to rank links alone without content. You really do need both now on your website. The content that surrounds your links in your second tier or below is a different ball game, but on your website you need your best content, and you need it now, I would suggest, with as much opportunity to achieve entity salience as possible. And that's what entity salience is, and that's how I would go about ensuring that any content I wrote had the best possible chance of Google seeing my content, my entity, as salient. Squitty signing off.